Happening now. We want to welcome our viewers from across the United States and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room. Good morning, good day, good evening. This is EdTech Situation Room, episode number 231, here on September 15th, 2021. My name is Dr. Jason Neifer, and I am the Assistant Director and Curriculum Director of the Montana Digital Academy, which is Montana's state virtual school located on the beautiful University of Montana campus right here in fabulous Missoula, Montana. And joining me tonight, as always, good evening, Dr. Wes Fryer. How are you tonight?
Good evening, Jason. I am well and coming to you from Oklahoma City, where we could count the months, less than a year, I remain the technology integration special and innovation specialist at the Cassidy School, where I've been. This is my 7th year, and I'm joined by Moose tonight, who's going to make himself part of the podcast. We are almost ready to cool down. It's like the mornings here have been like, it was 68 this morning. It was been low 70s, but I think a nice cold front is headed our way. The rumor was next Tuesday. So I'm guessing maybe you've had some cold weather up there. Maybe have it not yet, or maybe not.
It's getting chillier. We had a long string of 80-degree days last week, but our central air is off, which is a good sign. Which is becoming more necessary here, and we've had less fires, so the fire danger has gone down. There's still a number of active fires in the west, but it's less so than it was a couple months ago. So we're, September, Montana weather has always been kind of weird, and the seasons sometimes don't transition necessarily in the way you might think that they should. But we'll see some cooler weather soon.
Sounds good. Well, what are we going to do here tonight, Jason, besides have our, requisite little weather banter?
Well, Wes and I have combed the internets to find some interesting things to talk about tonight. And our topics tonight, obviously, we're going to have to talk about new Apple stuff, and we're going to have to fanboy for a couple of minutes, and we apologize ahead of time for whatever drooling we do during that segment of the show tonight. We've got some other interesting Apple news. It's been a big Apple news week, actually. We have some Google news to talk about, some Microsoft news to talk about, a podcasting a bit that I think would lead to some interesting discussion. And then Wes is going to share a great article on a new feature in Screencastify. And of course, we'll end tonight's show with our Geeks of the Week. So, Dr. Fryer, I feel like we are duty-bound as nerdy Apple fanboys to talk about the new Apple stuff. And there's a great article from The Verge yesterday. I've not seen the keynote yet. I literally was presenting in front of the Montana legislature yesterday afternoon when the event was going on. So I was not able to see it. But let's just talk about the 8 things that are new and the biggest announcements. So announcement number 1, well, there's a new iPhone. It's the iPhone 13. It comes in 4 models. iPhone, iPhone Pro Super Duper, I think it's called Max, and there's iPhone Mini. And they're kind of equal in that they have the same chip in them. They do have a diversity of RAM, so working memory that across the line. They also have different camera setups, and the Pro models, which would include the Pro and the Pro 13 Max, comes with a new screen. So I guess I'd start off with, let's go through these 8 things, Wes, and you tell me if this matters to you, right? So the first one, iPhone 13 is a similar designed iPhone 12 with a smaller notch. I personally have never freaked out much at the notch. I know some people are like wild anti-notchers, but do you care that the notch is there, and more importantly, that it's more svelte in the iPhone 13?
Yeah, not a big deal. I'm still sporting the SE with the home button, so I'm calling myself an old school iPhone user. No,
okay.
It's not a big deal. But I will say this, and it's not one of their items. There's a terabyte option. Oh, there's my wife Shelly making an appearance. It never happens. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so a terabyte on an iPhone Pro. So, that's, to me, that's stunning in terms of just a sign of the times of where we're at with
Sure.
phone. So, but yeah, the notch and whatever. But I am looking at that going, yeah, what's my upgrade schedule going to be? Probably, anyway, they're still selling the iPhone 12 and 11 and SE. So yeah, all of it's on the lineup.
Okay, the second a hardware upgrade that I think is worth talking about is that iPhone has finally adopted a hardware strategy that's existed in a lot of higher end Android phones. It's a higher refresh rate screen. So instead of the 60 hertz, which is what they used to top out at, you can now have a display in the Pro and Pro Max that's 120 hertz. And so I have to say that for about 2 weeks, I used a Razer Android phone. It was a gamer phone, or a gaming phone, I guess I should say. That was it wasn't all that popular sale, and I got it for dirt cheap. I ended up returning it because the software was pretty wonky. But I have to say, personally, I could tell the difference. Like, it was a much smoother experience over the 60 hertz screen. But a lot of mainstream Android phones come with actually 30 hertz screens, so the 60 itself is an improvement. So does this tempt you at all, Dr. Fryer?
I have crossed the threshold beyond, like, I've got to get the latest phone. So no, but it makes me think of TVs. When we saw TVs, I think, go from 60 to 120, and I don't know what they are now with 4K and everything. But the battery life is huge, and that's essential. And so part of that refresh is this technology that allows it to adapt. So if you need the fast frame rate, even when you're switching between apps or scrolling down, it kicks in and then it backs off when you don't need it, which is just phenomenal. I mean, one of my overalls is just how incredibly complex this technology is. And, when they say it's capable of something trillion, processor cycles a second or whatever, I don't know, whatever it is. It just, no, who can wrap their mind around it? It's crazy. But I think the battery life is essential. And the fact that this technology is really going to let your phone you're not maximize, taking that maximum battery sap out when you're just, watching a static web page or something like that. I think that technology is pretty awesome, and certainly has a lot of appeal thinking about longer battery life. That's a real practical, important thing to everybody.
Great. Next feature announced is iPhones add a cinematic mode for video and photograph styles for pictures. And I don't quite understand the technology behind it. I've only read a little bit on it, but my understanding is that it adds a blur style to the background in portrait mode style photos, and I believe you can also do that too in video. So adding kind of a dramatic flair and kind of what a filter might do if you were an apt Photoshop editor as a photographer.
Well, it's more than that. So I did watch the whole keynote. I kind of watched a little bit of it during the day today, and then I watched the rest of it tonight on my living room TV. It's not my Geek of the Week, but I'll recommend everybody needs to watch at least the intro. There were more drone shots and drone footage in this, and just the beginning and end is really a celebration of California and how much Apple loves California and what a beautiful state it is. But this technology we're talking about is a cinematic effect of where you're doing a close focus on somebody like in the foreground and there's somebody in the background, and then they turn their head and then the background comes into focus. What's incredible about their technology, and here we're gushing here. Apple's not paying us to do this, by the way. We just love them. You can even do this after the shot. So their technology is automatically sensing where it thinks your key subject is, and then doing the blur when you've got the cinematic mode enabled. But then if you want to, you can manually in the shot change who you're focusing on, whether it's foreground or background. But this is what blows my mind, is you can actually go in after you've shot the video and you can change the respective focus, after the fact in post-production. So this gets me excited about, digital storytelling. And of course they have a couple of filmmakers, and somebody's either nominated or won a few Oscars, and, they see what they can do, shooting scenes of some, a soldier carrying somebody, like a scene out of Platoon, and then some, a spacecraft with something, things are about to blow up or an alien's supposed to come. And, it's just incredible footage. And but thinking about the effects and the ways that cinematographers, create suspense, and they have a whole sort of mini, mystery whodunit. There's this painting that disappears from over this mantle. It was phenomenal. And I think with those 3 cameras and the processor, and I mean, it's incremental. Of course, every time there's a new iPhone, we see incremental change. But, the way in which Apple has kind of always wanted to bring pro level capabilities to the consumer and allow us all to elevate our game. Yeah, it is just, it's stunning. So, and I don't know of anybody else who's able to do that on a phone at this point.
And so since you watched the keynote, is this software? Is this hardware? Or is it both?
It's both. I mean, they have 3. This is only on the Pro, which the Pro
Right.
has the 3 lenses. The regular
Right.
iPhone 13 just has just two. But it's both. I think it's a function of having all those cameras simultaneously shooting video, focusing obviously at different, at different parts of the scene, and then allowing you with software to using its sensors and its intelligence, to detect that, but then allowing you to go in post production and change it too. So it's basically like, yeah, become Martin Scorsese or whatever. You can be the filmmaker who creates these amazing effects. We've done a few portrait style pictures. We took some of actually our dogs a while back. But I mean, it's really cool. I mean, it does look super, super professional. And the fact that you're able to do this in video, again, is sort of like this progression, because we had this portrait mode with still pictures and, amazing resolution and detail, and then being able to do this fancy, focusing. And now it's in video, and it's not just when you're shooting it, it's also after the fact.
Awesome. Also, new Apple Watch Series 7 are available. They're a little bigger, although they look svelter. I think that was part of making it bigger, was that it itself looked smaller. New watches start at $399, and no release date on this yet. By the way, the phones are available next week. So, any thoughts on a Series 7? And Wes, what are you wearing right now?
I'm wearing the Series 3.
Right.
So my first thing on the statistic that jumped out at me, because that's one of the things too about watching this, right? They have so many statistics, so many graphs. They pack infographics. Now they've got this just huge, like mock-up of the iPhone, but all the different parts, and they summarize it so well. I mean, it is like, it is so good to study as a communication media. I don't know if Apple's going to want to go back to regular face-to-face events. They do these things so well. And it reminds me of what they said about the early days of film, where we just used to have people, take a film of a stage play. And then somebody's like, ooh, we could take the camera, out of the theater. And then, obviously Apple is just, it's at another level. But they said in the Apple Watch section that they're fitting 50% more text on the screen, and they actually have a full keyboard, and they have of course, their own name for it, as far as being able to, slide your fingers around and use, AI machine learning to figure out what you're going to type. But the reason I'm not ready to just, I'm going to have to get this, they're still selling my watch.
Yeah.
So this new watch is selling for $400. The Series 3 is still selling for $200. Now, it also occurred to me, maybe it's time to sell this, because I could still get, maybe $100 for it. I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
But it is, it's incredible. And I'm sure there's going to be, maybe there already have been jokes as far as how big that's going to get. But it's appealing. It's going to, be more edge to edge, more durable. One of the things that they do, and is it Marquis Brownlee? I just started to see his video. It was made yesterday, right? And it has 13 million views. I'll drop that in the show notes or whatever, because he's a pretty incredible, tech critic, but also just really good Apple analysis. Like, they have the most amazing special effects and videography, in some cases, to sort of introduce small things, but they've got all these really, close up, or maybe they're just, they're computer created shots of the camera lens, all, going in its different parts. And then the watch, and these, what looks like boulders, that are falling down, but they're these small little pebbles, but they're showing how resilient it is. And, strong and not subject to cracking and all those kinds
Yep.
of things. So, are you sporting the 5 or the 6?
The 6. And it, and I have to say, I suppose I'm not surprised just because that, and I think I've mentioned this a couple of times here on the podcast, that, I know a lot of people that have bought both, or not have not bought both, that have bought either into the Apple Watch architecture or the Android Watch architecture. And we haven't talked about it much just because the news breaks my heart, but there's some good things happening on the Android Wear side of the world, but the bottom line is that that's a stagnant platform, and almost every person I know that started wearing an Apple Watch is still wearing an Apple Watch, and that's just not something that's true on the Android side. So it's not really a temptation for me to upgrade to a 7, and we'll talk about phones here in a second because I am a little tempted to update to a 13 because there are a lot of interesting deals available right now. But the Svelter watch is a temptation, but I have to say that this doesn't feel bulky to me. It looked bulky to me when it first came out, and this is the same form factor as the one, but or the Apple Watch 1. But the bottom line is that I've gotten very used to this, and I like the Apple Watch platform quite a bit. I'll stick with the 6 for now.
It looks like you have a good durable Montana band. That
I
looks
do,
like
yeah,
one you can, face bears in the wilderness wearing or something. It's like leather.
It's a blue leather band. And to get the one I wanted I didn't have to wait 6 weeks. I did get the blue aluminum sports watch model. I might remake that decision if I could do it over again, just because I'm not fashion conscious enough that it really matters all that much. But I do like to make sure that my belt and my shoes don't clash, right? I'm that fashion conscious, not much more, but I might go with the black or the silver or maybe even the gold, if I could do it all over again. But I wear this every day, and for me it's really more about health than anything else.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're coming up to some of the stuff about health to talk about. Peggy's got the version 4 and says she's really tempted by it. I think that, thinking of personal, tech upgrades and stuff, we talk about schools and return on investment and all this, how many different upgrades and cycles are you going to wait until you upgrade? I should see, but I think our daughter, who's a senior, may be using a 2011 or 12 MacBook Air. When she goes to college next year, that's going to be something we're going to get her. It's incredible that laptop has worked as well as it has, and is very functional. Like I said, the fact that Apple is still selling my watch and newer models is pretty extraordinary. And you gotta weigh this kind of thing with resale value and stuff, and try to time stuff right. I like to sell our stuff on Swappa. I don't remember exactly how many phones I've sold now, but it's been a number. And if you wait too long, your phone will not have much value at all, and that can go for a watch as well. So, yeah, that would be something to explore. And if anybody has any thoughts or ideas about that, if you have a rule of thumb, now that our kids are getting older, we've got one out of college, one in college, and one about to go to college. It's also interesting, when you start, buying your own phone. And I guess our kids might just stay on our phone plan forever. I mean, that's an interesting thing too, because it's cheaper that way. But yeah, I think on YouTube, because I do different cooking videos and barbecue. Somebody had chastised me. It was a Wi-Fi thing, and I was having trouble. Well, it just, my grill is a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and my Google Nest anyway. I've learned if you get a long distance away, then it's going to be at the 2.4. But anyway, somebody was criticizing me for having at that point an iPhone 8. How could you do that? That's probably your problem, And it's like, well, it's not that old, but
no, it's really not.
How long are you going to let these different, cycles and updates go? And what are the features, right? Is there something that's really a killer feature, other than speed and better camera? But I think that's something that we've just kind of, bumbled our way through in terms of figuring out. But we've reached a point where I'm just happy. I'm not yearning, oh my gosh, this is sluggish. This has issues. I know it could be faster and I could have a better camera, but it's pretty spectacular with what it has right now. And yeah, I'm not, the features and that kind of thing are not swaying me as much as probably thinking about resale value and the practicality of that. And like you said, if you can get a really good trade-in value, and there's some good trade-ins that are being offered, it might make it worth it to spring for it. I mean, I know plenty of folks who are on that upgrade path, and they're just sort of like a car payment. They're always, spending this money and getting this latest phone. That's what Apple would like us all to do, right? Be on the upgrade every year or upgrade every other year plan.
Yes, but at the same time, I feel like that they do a better job than literally every other manufacturer in this space of having their devices last a long time. Like, one of the reasons why I feel like that I might even update or I might even recommend the new device over a used device, even though that's currently what is other than my watch. I've got a used iPad and a used iPhone. Is that they do update them for 6, 7, sometimes 8 years, and that's unprecedented, right? Like, no one else does official updates in that way. And that's where, well, I'll wait to the end before I talk about kind of my thinking in regards to updating phones. But they keep making the calculus a little more complex, because I do think, well, and Apple people hold on to their stuff way longer too than literally any other manufacturer. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm guessing not much to talk about in regards to the new workouts coming for Fitness Plus.
Well, I'll say this. So sometimes, you might think, oh, I'm always an early adopter. Not really, not with everything. Subscription music was an example. I mean, was happy for years with the MP3s that I had ripped and the ways iTunes matched it, and was like, why do I want to pay a subscription? And then, at some point, Apple Music and then Spotify, and like, oh my gosh, it's just incredible to be able to have access to essentially the world's library of music. And then be able to speak into my smart speaker or whatever, or even phone and car while driving, and just, it's a dream. It's incredible. But I was a little slow to that. Well, the folks at Apple are pretty smart. Generally, when they take out a floppy disk or they take out a CD drive or something like that, they're seeing the future. And so this whole thing with fitness and having customized fitness routines, one of my thoughts seeing this, and I've been thinking about this for a while, your point, like, this is about health, and there are few bandwagons to be on that I think are more universal and, like, how can you deny it, than be healthy, be well, eat well, get exercise, sleep, take care of yourself, whatever my wife has been doing this wonderful diet for 4 months. She's lost 20 pounds. She's happier than she's been in years. And their whole thing is all about your why. What's your why? We all have different whys, but like being healthy. So I think I want to give this Apple Fitness stuff a try. I'm not saying I'm signing up for it right now, but the ways in which it brings personal tracking, personal data, feedback, encouragement, I believe that is definitely one of the transformational technologies that many of us do have on our wrists and in our pockets, and we can leverage it. Yes, there can be privacy issues, but again, Apple is really, I believe, genuinely on a good side of the whole privacy debate and privacy conversation. Having data about how our health is and being encouraged to, close our rings and, get that exercise. So I haven't tried it yet, but that is an effect that watching this whole keynote has on me, and it is a cumulative kind of thing. And I'm more convinced than I was before watching the keynote that, man, there is something to this Apple Fitness and all of the choices, all of the ways that you can get exercise. And again, have the data and track that. I think there is a lot of unrealized potential that many of us, myself certainly in this group, could realize in terms of personal health that the Apple Watch offers. And so I'm glad to see Apple continuing to advance this. And it does, we're gushing fanboy here, but it really does make me love the company even more, right? Because I'm thrilled that so many of the shots of the different products and things like that they were outside, and of course they were very, very diverse, very inclusive. There's all these different things you can see about the videos that they made. But I think that that encouragement to be active, to live an active lifestyle, to know where you're at, to have your own personal data, to keep it private, like these are things that I really, really like. And watching a video like this and seeing an event like this encourages me to want to be better and use Apple technology to do that. So yeah, there you go. This whole thing is like Apple should be giving us a massive, sponsorship. I'm sure it will be just coming in the Patreon account we don't have very soon.
2 new iPads. There's an iPad mini that has a bigger screen and kind of a refreshed design of the mini piece. Interestingly enough, it's got a USB-C port on it, which is in my mind probably really big news. That Apple seems hesitant to convert the whole line over to USB-C, but slowly and surely they're doing that with iPads. And then there's a new ninth generation iPad, which is just their plain model. It's not the Air, it's not the Pro, it's not the Mini. And both of these come with the A13 Bionic chips, I think.
Actually, the Mini is with the 15. This is what I'm going to say.
Oh, so wow.
They're that makes it a pretty great deal. They're keeping the $300 baseline iPad. Well, it's $320 or something commercial, and then educational, it's $299. So that device is still with an A13, Lightning. But yeah, our son has an ancient iPad mini, and this is making me think, hey, that might be a good Christmas present for him. Yeah. I'm glad to see them going with the USB-C.
Me too.
I've had an iPad Pro for a year or so, and I love the fact that I just have to have one charger.
Yep.
My charger charges, I mean, not for my phone, I still have to have a lightning charger for that, but I can charge my iPad, I can charge my laptop. And anyway, it's one of the few times with Apple it's been like a one less charger, But I think the power of these processors is just absolutely stunning. So it's I'm so glad we've got Chromebooks for our kids at school. I had conversations today with some of our administrators about that. We're power washing devices actually because of a Minecraft glitch and things like that. And I'm thankful for Chromebooks that we have in our hands, but don't take my iPad away from me, as a personal consumer and even as a teacher, because it's vital. And so I'm glad they didn't ditch the Mini.
Yeah, me too.
Because there's folks that just love that form factor, and the fact that it has an A15 is, pretty amazing too. Yeah, it is kind of like Peggy says, it's almost like a big phone, and that's what it kind of looked like as well. So if that iPhone's not big enough for you, baby, just get the iPad Mini,
right.
And then
and in fact, I used an iPad Mini too for a number of years, and in fact was able to sell mine. That's what funded my update to used iPad Air 3. Was I sold my not even being updated anymore iPad Mini 2 for $220 on Swappa. I mean, it had been in case every day of its life. It was in wonderful condition. But yeah, so. And then I would also say that new operating systems will be available on the 20th. It's iOS 15, iPad OS 15, and Watch OS 8. And I have been running the beta of iPad OS 15 on my iPad Air 3. And I mean, I certainly see what they're saying in regards to it's becoming slowly and surely more attractive as potentially a laptop replacement, because it tries to lean in a little bit to this notion of a more desktop-like experience. But I'm still not a give up your laptop for an iPad guy. But so far, the operating system has been stable. I've been on it since the second beta a couple of months ago, and it's been super great. So I will certainly update on all my devices. I don't feel nothing of mine's mission critical enough that my life would be completely destroyed if it was a little wonky. So I'll upgrade right away.
Not to leave the Apple event, but on a related note to upgrades, you dropped the New York Times article in there. An Apple emergency security update to close a spyware flaw. We've talked about this on the show before. There's this bizarre, cat and mouse thing that happens between hackers and white hat hackers and corporations. In the, I think it was maybe the CNET summary. I don't remember anyway. It was one of the videos that I watched. they were talking about, maybe it was USA Today. It takes millions of dollars to create the kinds of hacks they're talking about here. This has exploited something in iMessage, and it's a touchless, thing where you don't have to, quote, do anything wrong. It's not like you have to be clicking a link that's a phishing link, and then somebody sent you an email that said, you got to help the Nigerian prince or whatever. It's not like that. This is something that can actually be sent to your phone. It's touchless, and have full control over your phone. It's kind of terrifying. Now, Apple's officially said, and I would have definitely said this too, like, most of us are probably not at risk for this. These things, this NSO group sells things to governments and, security agencies. And, supposedly if people, are go rogue or do things that are, harmful, they're supposed to revoke them. But human rights groups have tracked these, and we've got, journalists and human rights advocates and others that end up being, tracked and basically persecuted, with these kinds of software tools. But this is pretty unusual. It's unusual for Apple to issue an emergency update, at school, for the EdTech Situation Room. How does this impact school? Our technology manager has sent out, hey, everybody must update your device. And if you don't, we're going to be coming to your room to verify, because they can tell with our mobile device management, which things have been updated and which haven't. And they're going to get everything updated this week. So that's a really significant thing. I just have updated my phone and my iPad tonight. So update your devices. Go into settings, general software update, and it'll check for the update and download that. But again, most of us are probably not at risk, because this kind of a 0 day, I guess, or this kind of a hacking tool is being used to target generally very specific individuals. And the thing that's weird about it is, there's a disincentive for people to release this kind of thing, because these are so valuable before they, become patched. And anyway, it's just kind of a weird thing. Even our security agencies will discover these or create them themselves, but not, report the vulnerability, because they'll exploit that and hope they're going to be able to get, so much benefit out of it until such time as it becomes patched. So somebody is wringing their hands and upset that this batch is out here, because there's been apparently millions of dollars spent to develop it, and now it's closed. But how long has it been out there? How many people have been subject to it? We don't know, but it is something that we see periodically. Microsoft was doing that more often, as far as something that was a real, hey, this is super important. SolarWinds. You gotta patch this. So Apple, it can happen to Apple stuff too. It can happen to anything, actually.
Yeah, it really could. And I did the same thing yesterday. Warned all my iPhone people of that. One last thing I want to say is that I'm only recently back in the Apple world, and as a matter of fact, I'm carrying around I think it's a 3-year-old iPhone XS, and I will say that if you're looking to upgrade, go to your carrier right now and find out if they've got an interesting upgrade deal available. Because as it turns out, I'm on T-Mobile. I know the Friars are T-Mobile people as well. That with trade-in and credits, you can pick up one of these devices for a relatively inexpensive amount of money. And so I got a couple of days. I need to more closely look at what the what I'm obligated to with the T-Mobile deal. But what I would also say is that, one option you can always do, it's available through Apple and through the individual carriers, is to pay somewhere between $30 and $40 a month and always have the newest iPhone. And, one of the things I was doing this week is kind of calculating some of the monthly expenses I have and a couple of the tech things I have, including a couple of streaming services and some other tech services that are nifty to have, but I'm not getting the use out of it, to see if I want to go to that yearly upgrade cycle. And I'm at the point of my life from a professional income standpoint that it's going to make sense, and at some point I will retire, and it will make less sense to do something like that. But there are options available. So one thing I've always noticed is that unless iPhones don't sell very well, and that's happened a couple of times, then the best time to get deals from your carriers is right now. So if you're interested in one of these 13s, go to their website. T-Mobile's is full of restrictions and pieces that I'll need to read through to do that. But I would get almost 2/3 of the value that I paid for this phone at the beginning of 2021 back. So that means I essentially received this phone for about $140, rented it essentially for $140 in the last 8 or 9 months, and then would be able to pick up a new iPhone 13 pretty cheap. So just something to keep in mind as you're making this calculus yourself.
Yep. Hey, Peggy's got an article that I had not seen at all. Weebly for Education is discontinuing. They have given about a year.
Oh,
So
I think
August
I heard
1st,
this. Yeah.
2022. And so all teacher accounts are going to automatically transfer to a free standard account. So all the Classroom 2.0 Live content is hosted there. And so they're thinking that they're just going to host it on the site statically, but not be able to update it. But anyway, that's a significant announcement. I had not seen that. So any other thoughts just overall in terms of Apple event and any just broad brush? You said you're thinking about the subscription. Any other thoughts?
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised by anyone's announcements anymore. It's been years since I've been surprised by either an Android or an Apple announcement about phones. It's been even longer than that. I've been surprised by LG or Samsung or HTC or any of the Android manufacturers. So that's not really where we're at right now. And at best, these are iterative devices that are being released. But, especially with the likely, it's not quite a guarantee, but the likelihood that you'll get 6 or 7 years of security updates out of these devices, they're a pretty good pretty good bargain, even at their expensive cost. And although you can easily, and you noted earlier that a terabyte iPhone is available now, and that's mind-blowing in itself, right? That's a $1,500 phone to pick up. I think it's actually a $1,600 phone to pick up the iPhone with a terabyte storage.
That's iPhone Pro, probably.
Yeah, iPhone Pro, right. But if you're a mere mortal that doesn't need a terabyte of storage space on your phone, I'd be in the market for a 256, I think, because I like to carry when I travel, and I will travel someday again. The notion of having the ability to store, movies, TV shows, and music on my phone for traveling purposes when I'm off the grid means a 256 would be my choice there. $1,000 investment may get you 6 or 7 years of a premium experience from Apple, and I think that's pretty impressive. So
yeah, it's incredible. Well, I definitely think your advice is well taken. That this is a great time to look at your carrier, see what your trade-in values are. And but hey, go to Swappa as well,
yes,
and take a look at how much is that going to be, because just as this is the time to look at a trade-in deal right when a new device comes out, it's also, after the new device comes out, the time to visit Swappa and see what a couple generations back is going to be selling for. It's super interesting to see Apple maintaining, and I don't know this for sure, but it seems to me like they're maintaining, both on the Apple Watch side and the iPhone side, more older models that are continuing to sell. Because sometimes the new one will be out, and then that previous pipeline just dries up completely. So I think this is Apple trying to recognize that the marketplace is diverse, and there's a lot of folks that aren't going to want to or be able to pay a top dollar for the latest device, but still being able to get a new device and the capabilities of the recently new that are just a year or two old are very formidable. So my last thought is just watch the beginning of the keynote. It's amazing. Even the way that Tim Cook is basically in this desert scene at the intro video, and then steps onto the stage, the screens that they have, the transitions that they have. I mean, it's incredible. It is absolutely, in my opinion, the best product cinematography that you'll see anywhere. And if I was teaching a digital storytelling class, or I might even use it with my students just to we have wonder links and stuff. Although the stuff happening in space now with the launch that just happened with 4 astronauts, there's all kinds of cool stuff to share. But
fanboy, you're
I
such a
know.
fanboy,
Oh,
Wes.
hey, my wife is just raising the next generation of astronauts right now. They've been planning their moon bases, and she was watching an Artemis video tonight. This is awesome. It's awesome what's going on in space. But yeah, it's wonderful cinematography. It's actually enjoyable to watch just from like a spectacle standpoint. And I'd watch the first half of the keynote on my phone, and then to watch it on our bigger living room TV was just fantastic. So check out at least the first couple minutes if you don't watch the whole thing.
Okay, well, we spent officially 40 minutes of time talking about the new Apple announcements. There is another Apple story that I feel like at least we need to start on this week, which is the Apple versus Epic ruling. I guess it's Epic versus Apple ruling has been released. It was on Friday, and the judge ruled kind of in favor of Epic, right? The premise, the big picture premise of the ruling is that Apple can no longer block third-party payment systems inside of apps. And we've talked about this case a couple of times, but the big picture piece here that is part of the challenge is that up until now, manufacturers can put apps in the App Store that charge money, but they have to pay, and then it varies by agreement with Apple, but about 30% of that revenue, that's the cost to make money on your app in an app store. And I believe that includes the amount that you can charge as well, that when you charge $3 for an app, for example, Apple takes about $1 of that away. And Epic, which is the maker of Fortnite, argued that that was illegal and monopolist in its intentions, and the judge agreed that you need to be able to allow third-party payment systems. And so it's a little complicated, and the one of the pieces here that and I'm not going to pretend to understand this, that there is another interesting analysis from Neely Patel in The Verge that says that it could get complicated depending on the difference between a button and an external link, that the language used in the order may create some differences in the way Apple interprets this. And again, I don't really pretend to understand. I've only read through it once, so I'm not going to be able to understand fully what that means. But there's a legal argument to be made that the button could just appear there without it actually doing anything. And it seems ridiculous, and that's a way to piss a judge off, to be honest, is to interpret in that way. But there's some hand-wringing about this. But it seems likely that in about 90 days or so that Spotify, the Kindle app, Fortnite, although Fortnite says it's not going to immediately head back into the App Store right away. All these apps that don't want to pay the 30% kind of Apple premium to be able to charge through the App Store will have third-party options.
Yeah.
Now, the judge fell short and didn't grant a claim that Epic really wanted, which was to declare Apple a monopolist, which means it would be subject then to antitrust legislation. And the judge specifically said that she did not buy the monopolist claims, and she said making a profit, even a significant one, is not illegal. And she refused to grant Epic's claim that Apple is a monopolist. And because of that, Epic is appealing the decision. They feel like they didn't get enough out of this lawsuit, even though I think the tech media was fairly universal in its insistence that this would put a huge dent in Apple's App Store business, to the tune of potentially upwards of $5, $7, $10 billion a year in revenue.
That's
So
gonna take it away from Apple, or
well, if well, no, ignoring the initial ruling saying you could link out, could take up take away billions of dollars from Apple every year.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so definitely complicated, not something like, hey, the new phone comes in 5 colors. I mean, it's not that kind of summary. There were elements of this that both sides could kind of claim a victory on. You already pointed out a key part, that the judge did not declare Apple a monopoly. Interestingly, Epic had, by order of the judge, and I guess they're going to appeal it, but it's supposed to pay like $2.8 billion or $1 million or something like that, which is the money that they would have paid had they not had for a while, this alternative app store, because they were under contract with Apple to do this. So that's kind of interesting. But I think that, this has been a complaint. I mean, we need app developers to be able to make money. We need app developers to be able to make money more than just the first time they create an app. And then, hey, I gave you 99 cents 10 years ago. Where's my updated app? I mean, that's not going to really fly with most companies. And maybe Google can give lots of things away, but I think it's a good ruling from the standpoint of the app developer. I think that this points to why, Android is important to Apple, right? Part of the reason why Apple is not declared a monopoly is because there's an Android marketplace out there. But, what will be interesting is to see if this has any kind of impact, and I don't think it will, on Apple's ability to curate and keep its app store, quote, relatively malware free. Now, we've talked on the show about articles that have said, hey, they're not getting software engineers to review these apps, and they're not getting the kind of in-depth security review that they really need. But I think Apple has overall done a better job keeping their app store clean of malware, or cleaner, than Android has. At least that's my perception. And so like many lawsuits, this is not the last chapter. There's going to be more. But I think from a developer standpoint, this is positive. Also, I'd say from a consumer standpoint, somebody said that it may not have any impact at all on consumers, because it just may depend upon what that app developer chooses to do. But what Epic was saying they were going to do, and I think maybe they were doing with their alternative store, was they weren't taking that 30% Apple tax or whatever and just and taking that all as their own profit. They were actually charging less for products than they would have if Apple was taking all of that. So I think from a consumer standpoint, this is a good ruling. I don't think this is gonna cripple Apple by any means. It is a pretty gargantuan thing for a company to do what Epic has done, and take on Apple. So I think it's fair to characterize it as a partial victory, and also, not the final chapter.
And, could ultimately impact schools too. I know that most schools end up shutting down things like in-app purchases and even app purchases because of the complexities of managing that with, especially large networks of iPads. But I actually think it might be good news for schools if third-party options were available. You could have a contract with a company, for example, to license a software bit that wouldn't mean you'd have to go through the App Store.
Yeah, and what app developers have typically done with the in-app is they'll have a separate app, right? That's the purchased app, and so rather than doing in-app and things like that, you'll get that in your VPP, or volume purchase program setup, and then you'll be able to distribute those apps. But looking at Explain Everything, and there's a number of other apps. Ooh, which, by the way, Explain Everything got a shout out in the Apple keynote, and I don't know if that's ever happened before, but that was pretty cool when they were doing the iPad stuff and talking about iPad apps and ones that would benefit. A little side note there that I happened to notice. I think that the subscription model is not only here for us as consumers, because that's what individuals and companies want, is to have a continued revenue stream. But that's also from a school standpoint, right? How many dollars per student are you paying for licenses for all kinds of different things? And then this is a real puzzle. How do you navigate and negotiate with teachers who are wanting to have the pro version of Nearpod or Explain Everything, or whatever it is, Book Creator, WeVideo, the list goes on and on. That process is important, and it also needs to be something that's dynamic and not just set in stone. Like, yeah, we always have had this subscription, we're going to have it forever. Well, there's a lot of factors that go into that: utilization, professional development, support, things like that. But this will make the environment in some ways more complex. But I think ultimately, we tend to have faith in this, right? That more choices mean better outcomes for consumers. And I think that's going to be an outcome of the lawsuit, at least at this point.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, well, breathe out. We've got 10 whole minutes left. We did manage to burn 50 minutes of our 1 hour show on Apple. Anything that you feel, well, you've got a couple links, I think, that are good pieces.
Let me do a quick Microsoft one. Maybe we can do that podcasting one. So Ars Technica reported today, this is the first time I've seen this, Microsoft accounts can go passwordless, making password 123 a thing of the past. And I think we might have mentioned this on the show, that this was coming. If I'm reading it right, basically, now you'll have hopefully a second factor of authentication. So you put in a password, and then you either get a text code on your phone, you have a key that you are actually plugging in, it's a physical key, you have something that you're proving, hey, I'm me. Well, now with Microsoft, you can opt to just turn off your password entirely and only use your second factor of authentication. So you're going to have that phone, that authenticator app on the phone, that YubiKey, whatever it is. So in some ways, it seems like that's a little less secure, because, password plus second factor seems to be better. But what are your thoughts, Jason? I haven't read anything on the security side to say, oh yeah, that's absolutely true, the second factor. Because anyway, if somebody would hack your phone, they do a SIM hack or something. We've talked about the T-Mobile breach that happened a few weeks ago. Then they don't even need their password. You just, waltz right in there with your phone, being able to get that text message. So do you have any thoughts about passwordless authentication?
Well, it kind of works that way now, in that the authenticator, like, you can set up Windows when you first set up Windows. And the reason why I know this, I mentioned last week that I was holding off installing Windows 11. I did end up installing Windows 11 on a laptop this past weekend, and I'll talk about. It's apparently being released like into the wild in October, so we can talk about that then. The headline is, it's kind of meh for me. But when I set up Windows 11, and in fact, last night I set up Windows 10, when I typed in my email address to say this is to sign in my Microsoft account, I didn't have to have a password. I just went into my authenticator app and I confirmed the 2-digit number it was showing on the screen, and that was fine. So they're already, kind of there, that you don't really need a password. The next step of this, in regards to this Ars Technica article, is that you don't have to have a password ever. You don't have to start off with a password, or even put a password in. You just need to be able to have your phone to authenticate. And I know, I feel like the password's an interesting backup, because if you lose your phone, or if your phone's out of battery, or you left your phone at home that day, you can still remember your password. But what I would say is that, password security is hard. And if you have something like a phone that is using biometrics to utilize this, or to utilize that, and you need to have it physically on you to do something about it, it feels like that's going to be more secure.
All right. Want to hit that podcasting article?
Yeah. This is about, and this only really makes sense if you're kind of a podcast geek, like certainly like the host of the show, but I would imagine a lot of our audience is as well. But Spotify's made a real move in the last 4 or 5 years to become a kind of a podcast giant, and it started by inserting podcasts into the feature in the app, both the desktop and the mobile app, and then they bought Gimlet, for example. They also brought in the Joe Rogan podcast as an example of content creators that they're kind of snapping up into their architecture. They bought several tools a couple years back, including some ad metric tools and some ad insertion tools for podcasters. But this article from 9to5Mac talks about that while that's an interesting play on Spotify's part, power users just don't use Spotify for their podcasting app. And the reason why, and it mentions this in the article, but I'll tell you my reason for doing that, is that the tool is just not that nuanced and powerful enough for what I would consider to be a power podcast listener, right? I have over 200 subscriptions that I look at on my podcast app. I'm a Pocket Cast guy. I have been for a number of years now. And if I wasn't on Pocket Cast, I would use Downcast on iOS, which is also a wonderful podcasting app. But the auto download features and the archiving features and the playlist features and the up next features that kind of sort of exist on Spotify, it's just not an advanced experience in my humble opinion. And I think that's an important lesson for Spotify, that the content is part of it. And I guess if there was a person that was only on Spotify, they haven't done that with like the Gimlet podcast yet, for example, and I really hope that they don't. I probably would open up Spotify, which is my music provider. I do have a premium subscription to Spotify. That's the service I pay for music. That might be tempting to me, but to go on there to listen to that. But the bottom line is that I'm not going to give up my app. So, Wes, I believe you're also a Pocket Cast guy.
Definitely, yeah. And that article points out, I mean, it's about RSS feed subscription, right? Yep. Subscribing to the feed. You can't do that within Spotify. But I will say, and so yeah, from a power user standpoint, no way. I've avoided. I sometimes will have Google, play a podcast for me, and I like how I can pick it up on another speaker at a different time and it remembers. That's convenient. But yeah, from the standpoint of someone having tons of subscriptions and not being able to just import them, no way. Now, I'll say Google Podcasts does have the import feature, and when I played with that, I did import all of my feeds over there. But maybe a bit surprising that Spotify doesn't have it. In Spotify's favor, I'll say that I helped my wife Shelly get set up with, we have a Spotify family subscription, and with her own login, and in her classroom, she has it, and she's loving listening to podcasts on Spotify and has discovered new things. And it's a lot of science, and she's teaching third grade. And if you'd like to have a new earworm, tell your smart speaker to play, what is it called? Backstroke Raptor. Oh my gosh. It's just goofy. But anyway, that's discovery. And so being able to have the intelligence of AI and the algorithms working on what you listen to, what you listen to, and what other people are doing and listening to that are similar to you, that whole thing, the recommendation engine like YouTube has and other things, it's really powerful. And so I will say that, she is benefiting from it, but would certainly not be a power user in terms of podcasts and subscriptions. So, point well taken. I think that's right. For those of us that are heavily invested in podcasts, Spotify is not the platform to jump into. Google Podcasts, maybe, because you can get that benefit of Google's AI working for you as far as sharing, recommendations for you. But I'm sticking with Pocket Casts, and I'm very happy with it.
Oh, me too.
All right.
Well, Wes, it's 8:59 in the Mountain Time Zone. Shall we Geek of the Week it?
Let's do Peggy George's first. Peggy shares that she got a great new tool from Steve Dotto. It's called Track My Subs. Helps you manage all of your digital subscriptions. It can be so hard to keep track of. So I had not heard of that, and thanks for pointing that out. And she also shares a link to his demo, and you can't really click that link when we flash that message up there on the screen, but I'll put both of those links into our show notes as Geeks of the Week. And she says there's a free version, but it's also affordable, and she plans to pay for the subscription. So again, just like with schools, what are you going to pay for? It's a good thing to add those things up. And if you hadn't sound like you've just done a personal audit, that's a good idea, Jason. If you haven't personally audited all your micro subscriptions, that's a good thing to do and decide, is it something do I need to keep all of these? Or maybe you need to ditch them and then get a subscription to get a new iPhone every year. All right. Do you want me to go with mine next, or you want to share yours?
Yeah, I can do mine quickly. We may have even mentioned this before in the past, but I did it over the weekend. It was pretty interesting. I went and downloaded all of my Twitter data, and you can do this. I have a link in the show notes with instructions to how to do so. And the other day, a 160 megabyte zip file showed up. A link to it in my email showed up, and I was able to go grab all my Twitter stuff. And not only does it make it fairly easy to go back in time, including my very first tweets in 2009 is when I started tweeting. Interestingly enough, I didn't have anyone respond to me on Twitter for like a year and a half. I was what I like to call then a Twitter D-lister, right? Because I didn't have any followers and I wasn't really engaging anyways. But the thing that was also interesting about it is that every picture I've posted on Twitter was also part of that archive. It is a little mind-blowing that, and I'm not a heavy Twitter user, but I'm a decently engaged Twitter user, that they're storing 160 megs of my data on there. But I was able to pick out probably 20 or 30 photos that I actually put into Google Photos to save. Because they were ones I didn't have otherwise. And so it was pretty interesting to go back and see my old tweets, but more importantly, to grab all that media that I'd posted over time.
Outstanding. I will just comment on that I ran for a while this program called Tweet Nest that I ran on my own server. It was a PHP app that would archive my tweets, and then Twitter changed its API and it stopped working and it's broken. So I've downloaded mine as well, and it's kind of crazy how big it is. It's kind of like, what do I do with this? Because anyway, I think it's good to download, and with Facebook, anyway, there's limited options as far as your data portability. That's one of the things I think we need some regulation about. So I've got 2 quick geeks of the week. PBS is offering and continuing, this is not a new thing, a media literacy educator certification program. So you can earn 8 micro credentials. It's free. I actually saw this because Montana and Idaho actually partnered together with a cohort, and I think I'll be joining, even though I'm out of state, and we'll be earning their credit, which is fine. It's cool. And so check that out. You can sign up no matter where you are, but if there's a cohort in your area, or maybe not even in your area, you might be able to sign up and do that as well. And then my other one is actually a resource that I've created this week. We have a new class for our juniors. They're all taking it's called American Design course, and it is a combined American U.S. history and American literature course. And their first unit is Big Tech. And so I put together a presentation, which I recorded about 30 minutes, why care about privacy and surveillance capitalism. And so the slides are up there and all the links, and then a bunch of other topics that were not in that presentation, Twitter lists, recommended videos. Yesterday, I had a chance to, I don't teach a high school class that often, teach 2 classes, which were basically Q&As, because we flipped it, and the kids most of them had watched the video in advance, and then we discussed it. And it was pretty invigorating. And this EdTech Situation Room is one of the main places where I have pondered these kinds of ideas about privacy and surveillance capitalism and the tech correction and a lot of that. So if you want to see a very impressive picture of Jason Neiffer standing in the dark hallway of some Montana high school, I think, or maybe that's at the college. I grabbed that off of the web illegally, I would ask, and put that on there, giving him credit for coining the term the tech correction. So anyway, that's just a kind of summation of a lot of my thinking right now about surveillance capitalism, Section 230, and 3 stories of really Facebook primarily egregious just actions, immoral actions that have led to tremendous harms, and scream out for us to do something to regulate this behemoth that is apparently beyond anybody's control.
Yep. And I listened to about half of it today on my lunchtime walk. I'll listen to the other half tomorrow. This will be classroom ready for your classroom too. So
yeah, use it if you can. All right. Well, I'm W Fryer on Twitter, and I'm westfryer.com. hey, and I'm looking for assistant professor positions for the 22-23 school year. So I've actually put that out on Facebook and just have one application out there. But if you know of an educational technology position, or I have a curriculum instruction doctorate. So if there's a literacy position or a social studies position, but especially a literacy position that is not just about traditional literacy, but media literacy, then hey, I could be your guy. So let me know about that. And I've got a few different friends sending some job applications, and it's going to be an exciting, hopefully fall. And we'd love to, know sooner rather than later where we'll be bound outside the wonderful state of Oklahoma next summer.
Awesome. And I'm Jason Knifer at Tech Savvy Teach. I'm not looking for a job right now, but I'm always open to conversations about things like conference sectionals or keynotes or other type of things, as I know Dr. Fryer is as well. But this here is not just us trying to get work. It is the EdTech Situation Room. We're a once-a-week podcast on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. Central Time, sometime in the middle of the night UTC. If you can't join us live, and we wish you would, please download our podcast anywhere finer podcasts are aggregated, or you can go to Facebook, you can go to Twitter. Actually, you can go to Twitter. It's not there, but it's linked on Twitter, or you can go to YouTube, where the archive is always there, or go to our website, edtechsr.com, download tiny MP3s, or get show notes. We wish you a safe and savvy week. We hope to see you next week on the EdTech Situation Room. Good night, and we'll see you next time.
And so ends tonight's 1AR.